It's another edition of Grab a Coffee, your premium social political podcast. And yes, welcome to the podcast. My name is Simon Kasiate, and as usual, with my partner in crime, Raymond Mujuni. Raymond.
I should also say my name is Raymond Mujuni.
That's how
Why do you do this though? Why do you say my name is Simon Kasiate?
No, I said my name is Kasiate. Simon Kasiate.
Okay, so why do you do that? Why do you do the repeat thing?
My name is Bond. Okay. James Bond.
Okay, now I understand.
Absolutely.
My name is Mujuni, Raymond Mujuni.
Absolutely. Now, the problem is if you have a third name.
I don't want to mention your third name on this podcast, but I hope that people know you do have one.
No, I actually have two more names that are really silent in this whole thing. Okay, one is Simon Peter, that's one name.
Yes.
And then, of course, I have the other name that's pretty much a sentence. But we proceed.
How have been your weeks, sir?
My weeks have been fine because we haven't met pretty much in a while. But
okay, we've met, but we haven't recorded. Don't make the impression that we haven't been meeting.
For purposes of our listeners and viewers, our meeting should be to have this conversation.
Okay, yes.
But of course, they know that we do meet to prepare for this conversation, to have post-mortem of the conversation we have previously. And so we keep, it's a running engagement all through. But yes, pretty much fine. Like everybody else, just reading from the political happenings in the country and getting really firmly into what we've several described here as the silly season.
And of course, this episode is proudly sponsored by MultiChoice and their Showmax episode Show Now, which you can get for 11,400 using your Momo, and you'll have access to all their entertainment, including the FIFA World Cup.
Or simply catching up with some Kampala cream, Showmax is where all your favorite entertainment is.
So the last time we met, you traveled to Rwanda.
Yes.
You were able to attend the long form podcast. How did that go for you?
Well, I think I should agree with you that today we should have the long form of Grab a Coffee.
We promise we will do it.
To have a protracted conversation of what happened. But I think it was a very enlightening engagement that I did find with our Rwandan friend who runs the long form. One, the production and aesthetics of the setup for their live recording, which I must tell you with a lot of glee was benchmarked on our live recording that we had.
We're doing great. Doing great.
But I think they went over and above in terms of the aesthetics, in terms of organization, but even most importantly, getting different corporate and non-corporate partners to come on board for the usual support that we're always grappling with. Yeah. And then, of course, the subject matter was not political. It was deeply social. It was something that we have not discussed on this podcast, but it's a conversation that has gone on in several spaces in Uganda. It's not entirely a Rwandan problem. It's not an African problem, but I think it's a global problem where we see the boy child having not suffered, but having been relegated to a point of society thinking that they are okay and they've figured it out. And so there was all this affirmative action towards the girl child. And now we are getting home to the cocks, going home to roost and finding the boy child behind in terms of different facets, especially on the negative scale of things. That when the demographics are put on the table, of course, there are more girl children than boy children globally. But you'll find that in correctional centers, prisons, mental hospitals, and all sorts of bad places, the boy child's population is way higher, it's exponentially higher than for the girl child. That when you look at institutions like marriage, those who are failing miserably at it is the boy child. Well, of course, the boy child is always married to the girl child for the most part. But a lot of fingers seem to point to the boy child. And there was this social consciousness to say that boys are not boys anymore. And even when they are boys and transit physically and with age into men, they don't actually assume the manhood as should be. They are not responsible to self and those around them. They are delinquent for the most part, and they are dragging the progress of their respective societies and countries backward because they are not stepping up to the table to do exactly what is expected of them, which is naturally to take leadership. So that conversation was really deeply engaging, and the guest on the program runs a sort of boys mentorship club. It's called Boys to Men, interestingly named. A very interesting man with an incredible life story. I hope that one day we are able to at least for us on Incredible Life Stories, to have him on Incredible Life Stories with Simon Kasiati, because he's a Rwandan by maternal birth and Belgian by paternal birth. So he is crossbred, but I don't think he has an idea who his exact father is. And so that's a story that's deeply touching. Someone who grew up without an identity of their own, did not even grow up in the country of his mother's birth. I think he grew up in a couple of refugee camps scattered between the DRC and Burundi, and then gets into the liberation movement, the RPF that eventually liberates Rwanda after the genocide, serves as a military man, and now gets into the corporate world. I think he works for MTN in Rwanda.
In Rwanda, yep.
And he, to sum it up, says he joined the Inkotanyi, as they were known then, largely to find an identity and to get a father figure in his life. And you imagine you're looking for identity and discipline and father figure, and you join the military, and not just the regular military, but a guerrilla rebel movement. I think his story is something out of this world, but it was engaging. And then, of course, in the room were distinguished folks in the Rwandan society, both in business and in government. And I had a long conversation with Sani, who is the host of the program, and I think he has his head properly screwed on his shoulders and is progressively looking at how the podcast can make meaningful impact in his society. But even more interestingly was the conversation around the synergy creation of podcast content creators like ourselves in terms of having conversations that bridge our countries. I mean, there is a lot of collaboration between our countries at political level, at military level, at business level, and I think in our business as well as podcasters, it's important for us to have conversations that bridge the two people to facilitate all the other conversations that are going.
I'm keenly looking forward to that. I got into Kigali, of course, that day, but very late in the evening. I had a chance to meet Sunny later in the evening at a very impressive place called the Menzi Residency. They're doing amazing stuff about homegrown food. They're making their own alcohol. But I had a chance to speak with him much later. And I think that it's something that we will do, definitely. We will have podcasts that speak to the social problems across the region, podcasts that speak to the economic problems across the region,
the political,
or even how we interact with the politics of the region. I was, of course, not very privileged in that weekend. I was in Nairobi, I had to be in Kigali and in Kampala, all in under 24 hours. So I had a chance.
That beyond Kigali, I even went to Gisenyi, so I was in
exactly.
And I got a chance to appreciate not just the capital city as it is. I mean, when we come back from that beautiful country and speak of what we find, you'll get a few pockets of society thinking that, oh, you did not see the underbelly of everything. But believe me, I did see. And
I just want to
put it plainly. Kigali always will mesmerize you. And then when I went to the countryside, the roads, the undulating hills, and then of course the city of Gisenyi, and knowing exactly what has been happening, especially across the other side in Goma, you find life is, normal. People are bustling with activity. It was a weekend, so you can imagine there was a bit of weddings and then parties. The only downside is that you don't do a whole trans night like should be in Kampala. So at 2 a.m.
everything closes.
Absolutely.
Yes, for our Rwandan friends, if you tell them that you are in Gisenyi for a weekend, it means something exponentially different. So I think, no. I think for Rwandan friends, please understand that Simon was in Gisenyi on official duty.
Absolutely. Very official.
No. But that was really interesting. And when we got back, of course, the NRM immediately was getting into their Central Executive Committee elections. I think we spoke somewhere during the week. There was an attempt at mediating some of the races. Some of that attempt was successful. The president's brother was pulled out of one of the races, for example. But one of the races that went all the way to the wire was the second vice chairperson of the NRM. Simon, I'm just trying to understand, as a layman, why is it important for people to be members of the NRM CEC?
Raymond, I want you to understand something around President Museveni. which is the access to President Museveni, which essentially is access to power. I have officiated at events where the president is, and in attendance are cabinet ministers and all. And along the way, you get chits from a cabinet minister pleading with you as the master of ceremony to, please, Simon, can you please make mention of my presence at this event? And for a moment, I asked, but you should be seeing the president every Monday in cabinet, at least at the bare minimum. And then I realized, even when they sit in cabinet, they will sit like how we used to do in class. And then say the teacher or the headmaster shows up from the other door, addresses you, and then goes back. So there's no personal access. And even then, he doesn't chair every cabinet. Oftentimes he lets the vice president or the prime minister chair it or any other person designated. But for SEC, which sits every quarter, few as they are, it is said, I've never attended the SEC meeting, but I have been told that President Museveni personally chairs SEC. And because it's a close-knit group of less than 10 people, or thereabout, the actual members, there is unfettered access to the president for a conversation to extrapolate on one or two other issues that you may have with the president. So this clamor that you see is purely out of the need to have full unfettered access to the president more often than any other person.
But
that's why even someone who is a nominee to NEC designate and holds a number 3 in terms of political hierarchy in this country as the Speaker of Parliament will go to the length to which she went to be a confirmed member of SEC in that position so that they are there. Today SEC can say that we're going to sit as an inner circle of SEC. And they have to ensure that they are there. So it's about access to President Museveni and then the ability to sway things in the way you'd want them to be swayed because you have that access to the president, or at least seem to have the power and access to the president.
Just help me.
And you know what comes down the line? You have the power, then of course the money, and everything that I don't think I want to comfortably speak about.
I'm just humored. In the last... immediately after the last election, just before the last election, the NRM got into this marriage of convenience with the Chinese Communist Party. And the Chinese Communist Party, in terms of political organization globally, is one of those really straitjacket parties. Power flows from the top downwards, and you can't get to the top except through this very merited system. You must sit exams, you must be tapped upon by delegates to get to the top. I got the feeling that the NRM wanted to model its politics around the Communist Party of China. And some of the members who have now won and become members of NEC were people who were NEC first, not SEC, okay. Yes. So like Ofono Pondo spent almost months in China trying to learn this. Richard Odwong was one of those people, the Secretary General of the party. He went, I think he spent also months in China trying to learn this political modeling. I'm just wondering, is the NRM trying to now model its politics based off of the Communist Party? Is this what we are seeing with this election? That people know if you're not a member of the highest decision-making organ of the NRM, then you're also not a very prominent person in government. Yes, like you could have a position in government, but it means nothing if you can't influence the politics of SEC. Is that it?
That's one way of looking at it, although it is trying to get your wits and fix it and put in a Ferrari engine. There will be certain limitations even when you power it to maximum speed, that the aerodynamics around its body shape and all that may not facilitate that engine to drive you as fast as it would drive a Formula 1 car because it is shaped the way it is now. The NRM may want to model itself around the Communist Party of China, but the attention to detail and the meritocracy that is promoted in the Chinese society right from the family level is what gives that meticulous and almost straitjacket conduct that you see at the top political body. Bounce that off into Uganda society and how we are organized and arranged. When you have an election superintended over by a character like Professor Tango Odoye and the kind of flake that he has received from participants in the election at candidate level and voter level, and he is still the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, shabby as his process is, at 16th century as it is, where you have to line up behind someone in an era where they could have done this using technology. And then you can see the aesthetics of the arrangement around Kololo. Yes, the tents were nice and all that, but then what do you see around the specifics of the area where they are? You've defecated all over the pedestrian walk paths. You have put ugly posters all over the place. In fact, covering posters of already established institutions that have their signages there. It is a chidandari, so to speak. It's just a chikomera, a market that has absolutely no order. And then you have all these complaints coming through, and the chairman of the party, benevolent as he possibly does mean, it still takes it from that further nature. No. These are small things. We shall handle them. Question is when, how. But in China, you don't get a complaint leveled against a technical member of the party, no less the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, and there is no immediate action, if for nothing else, to save face of the credibility of the process. You have a person like Dr. Chris Raymond speaking up onto the microphone way past midnight and telling the president that whatever the result, whether I win or not, I will not associate myself to that result. It will be illegitimate, simply because the process has been flawed in the most ugly of manners. And that was his election coming almost at the tail end of other elections that have been held. So the absence of meticulous order and the backhand knowledge of knowing that when you mess up what should be a good process, there are going to be prohibitively harsh reprimand from the party disciplinary structure, is one of those impediments that will not allow the NRM to get to the point of the Chinese Communist Party, because the discipline is not one of the things that is core to our DNA. It's always compromise, trying to cut backhand deals, and the glorification of mediocrity. Oh, at least maybe they tried. Nonsense. If you haven't done it right, you haven't done it. Okay? I don't think it's fanananga, it's kolanga. It is either this or nothing at all, like we say with Mercedes. The best or nothing.
Or nothing at all. But I also, looking at the new SEC, Jonad, Hamson Obua, Anita Among, Echodo, all of these are fresh new faces. And to be fair, with the exception of Hamson Obua and Anita Among, the rest haven't dug their feet into politics. Yes. This is their first try at it. I was puzzled, to be fair, by how well they mobilized their campaign. And there's a lot more that needs to be explained. A person like Echodo, it can't just be money for Echodo to undo Mr. Mike Mukula. It can't just have been money. It couldn't just have been money for Jonad to undo a person like Chris Baryomonsi. Chris Baryomonsi is pretty well heeled in the party. He also has friends within the party. Some of those friends include King Caesar, for example, who are very moneyed as well. He has friends like the Deputy Speaker, Taiwa, who are also moneyed. So there's a lot of things that people just explained away through the use of money. But I could see that there was a meticulous hand in the back trying to guide the way the outcome of those results were.
Have you thought of something called voter fatigue?
I have thought about this, but
that you see, okay, we can stand the fatigue of having one guy as the chairman of that party for almost now 40 years. We can understand the historic and, further position of Haji Chigongo in the party. But should we take that down to almost the last member of SEC, that even Mukula, who for time immemorial has been the constant face of NRM politics in Soroti and Teso region all through, but also who has not been a stranger to taking painful losses in his own backyard, as on a small scale as being a member of parliament.
Yeah.
So when it comes to SEC and you're perennially there is a chance that, voters will say, but wait a minute, this guy has been poked before. We can actually go ahead
and poke him again.
That same fault on him to widen it and actually trounce him. And if you look very carefully, there's an element of that kind of apathy for people like Mike Mukula. For Chris Baryomonsi, I think he himself dug his own grave by, his position as government spokesperson, coming in from a top critic of the NRM and government from the time he was a rebel MP, the Nebanda situation, and then makes that flip becomes government spokesperson, and he has certain demeanor when he goes into public spaces for debates on TV stations and radios, and how he conducts himself with a disdainful face, and what many people consider to be arrogance and the chichigakanda. Sometimes that plays out of his favor, and people are like, but wait a minute, let's just tame this guy for what he has been up to. So it comes down to what we've been seeing on social media. The hate watch begins to now
be pointed and focused.
Exactly.
But also, Simon, the other aspect
you can't remove the fact that there's been tremendous mobilization from especially the likes of Jordan. And I mean, Jordan just showed up on billboards all over the country. And
I don't think he did. And for me, this is the thing that I want further explanation for. There are candidates who were candidates that were mobilized for by the Prime Minister's office, Robin and Nabanja.
That detail I didn't have.
Yes.
Tell us.
There are candidates who were mobilized for by the office of the Vice President, Jessica Lupo. And I mean, I'm always skeptical of Mr. Museveni, but I think that the limitations he placed on the people that are becoming powerful in the NRM are so profound to send a message that everyone here is dispensable except Museveni.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And any SEC member that was subjected to a vote lost that vote. And they lost by miles. So that was also a massive communication in the sense that you don't own members of the party. I know some of the candidates for SEC who had sort of put together a campaign platform. They were paying money together. So they'd say, if delegates need 300,000, I will raise 100. Can you, who's running for this position, also raise a 100? I'll get another person to raise the 100. So they were almost running a chain in terms of their campaigns. But I can also see that the most powerful person that emerged from this election was Anita Among. And she didn't get her wish in which people she goes with to the SEC. That was also another profound element that, everyone is talking about this crowning moment that Anita Among defeated Rebecca Kadaga. But on the whole, the candidates she wanted to come with into SEC, she didn't come with them. So now she's a lone figure on SEC.
Exactly.
Surrounded by people who might actually be hostile to her at some point.
Actually devour at some point. Yeah. You're very right. What's for sure that we cannot take away from this whole exercise is the further cementing of President Museveni as a masterstroke of political genius.
I don't know about that. He should have also subjected his position to an election. That'd be the easiest way to find out.
Raymond, if you've bothered to follow President Museveni, you know that he would never take chances on something called an election, because he knows from the underbelly of his experience and what he has seen elsewhere, but also not just spiting God. You will say, okay, fine, let me just bring Raymond, little known journalist, to come and contest against me. Did you see how ferocious the machinery was against Honorable Felix Okoto-Gong when he made an attempt at contesting for the chairmanship of the NRM?
Yes.
I mean, you'd expect that, come on, if our President Museveni at that time would have allowed Felix Okoto-Gong and 20 others like him to contest for the chairmanship of the NRM.
Yes.
But my friend, President Museveni does not take chances with regard to an election. That's why the moment he swears in, he begins to campaign for the next election. For you, well, he will shout it in the whole business that he's running government business and, supervising government programs and the like. But what's for sure, at the underbelly of it all, he is actually running a campaign.
Yeah,
and that level of consistency and discipline is what he will not try and soil by saying, okay, even me, let me subject myself to the vote.
No, but I mean, he has constantly said, at least publicly, that without power, you can't do anything. So you must first have power before you're able to do anything. And that message has profoundly stuck. But also, the other thing I wanted to ask the apparatchiks of the NRM, many of the people who are actually powerful in the NRM are not represented on the ballot, are not actually members of SEC. These are outsiders. And for me, the question was,
you want mention of some names? Because people need to know.
No, I am not going to mention names.
Well, at least it came out on social media in the course of the week. We saw a picture of two lawyers, the Venerable Attorney General Kirio Akiwanuka and his partner, Karuchiri. Yes. And someone quipped and said, this is the real SEC. All the others you see...
I don't know about that. They're not political in nature. They don't have voters that go with them. They don't have political constituencies. But for me, the question is, if you're the NRM, you're trying to deliver a tenfold growth in the economy, as is the politicians that are going to deliver it. There's this massive mismatch between the economic ambitions of the NRM and the political bureaucracy to deliver it. And for me, that's the question that I want to ask the SEC members now, that this new SEC that you have, is it a SEC that you will take this tenfold growth program and ask them, okay, what are your thoughts on this? Is this the kind of SEC that is going to negotiate sovereign wealth funds? Because the coming 5 years of the NRM are also the years of oil money, and that oil money is going to be in the sovereign wealth fund. Is this the SEC that's going to say, what infrastructure changes do we need to make in Uganda to make it functional? Should we get a railway? How do we get the railway? Are these people that you're comfortable enough to say, I'll send this person to Turkey to negotiate for us a railway and come back? These are really profound questions I want to ask the NRM. Otherwise, this is how the NRM dies.
No, if anything, that's how it survives in the way it survives, where it survives. This SEC is by miles apart, way better than the composition of the close to 100 members of the NRM cabinet as it is today. You look at the caliber of the cabinet as it is today. And President Museveni said it when he announced the cabinet, said, for me, my cabinet of fishermen and fisherwomen. And for the most part, I don't think that SEC is very much hands-on in the governance of this country in as far as putting across that tenfold program is concerned. It has to be the political bureaucracy, which starts with cabinet and even gets down to parliament. So look at the caliber of the parliamentarians that we send, we as ordinary people, those that emerge from us to become our members of parliament. Look at the cabinet that eventually President Museveni selects, headed by the head of government business, the Right Honorable Prime Minister. Let's be very honest, and sorry, I may sound off a little bit callous, but believe you me, I Raymond, I don't know what President Museveni wants to do, by what kind of magic, by having an incredibly well-listed tenfold program, the NDP4, beautiful document that you can see would certainly take us into what he calls the upper sections of middle income status. But then when you look at the people that should be driving this agenda, they fall far away from the kind of merit and astuteness that they should be. Perhaps the only hope that remains is with the technocrats underneath, where you have people like the PSST, you have the guy at National Planning Authority. But the question is, technically they may be sound and write all these great papers and postulate on how we can proceed as a country. But do they have the political power to make decisions? The answer is no. So what does that tell you? That the power lies in...
Yes, but that and that's a danger. I mean, we often just say this in passing. Museveni is almighty, all powerful. I don't think he is in the NRM. He makes a lot of concessions. Sometimes those concessions are forced upon him by more powerful members in the party.
I don't think so. I think President Museveni's power is like the power of a chain, that its flexibility is in fact.
No, so Museveni is a constitution of multiple power centers. He has military power, he has cultural power, he has political power, and he also has a power of ambition over the NRM, that no one in the NRM has greater ambition than he does. And because of that, sometimes or many times, many people defer to him.
The bit of ambition, the question is maybe historic ambition from way back.
No. Even in terms of, I mean, at the end of the day, power is only a means to an end. Museveni knows the end he wants out of Uganda. He wants this middle income country. He wants to be seen as the statesman that delivered Uganda from poverty into the middle income. He's making fantastic, dramatic investments in infrastructure. He's making investments in politics itself. He's making investments on the international stage. I think a lot of the ambition of the NRM is still very much his vision.
And you
left to other people, there would be other things.
Vice chairperson of the NRM, female, whose political rise you have watched over the last few years, and her machinations and her ability to galvanize different sections of our society, both local and international. It's just unfortunate that internationally her wings were clipped. She's only left to fly into the Vatican and back, and not any other places where you can have meaningful conversations like Washington and London. Where do you think she has no ambition?
Well, she's no more meticulous than former Secretary General Mama Mbabazi. She's no more meticulous than that. In any case, those people have delivered a bigger election margin win for Museveni than she has. When she was powerful, Museveni's vote count in the East was just 60%. In their time, it was even higher. So, I mean, people worship her because of her ability to use money and crude force to marshal MPs around. But when it comes down to it as a political operative, and I'm speaking very honestly, she's not the political weight that people say she is.
Maybe it is her crudeness and money-infused machinations that actually is the face of our politics as it is.
Yes, I mean,
would risk assuming that our politics here is as sophisticated as what we see played out in the House of Commons and House of Lords.
It is. It's actually, and this is my point. My point is that Uganda's politics is very sophisticated, and you've got to have a level of intelligence to understand it. Some of the most intelligent politicians of Uganda include people like Edward Sekandi. An ability to step back and say, what are the limits of my power in this political system? And what can I do outside of power? Today, the Buganda Central Chairman on SEC, Haruna Kasolo, is Sekandi's godson, political godson.
Absolutely.
And he's been able to midwife a transition from him to another person. Not many people have had that chance. I mean, Rebecca Kadaga says she's the queen of Busoga. She's not been able to midwife a transition from her to another person of her choice.
Yes.
So, by and large, when you ask me who is a better politician, I think Sekandi is a better politician. He's outlived his time. I don't know.
To use his own words,
yes.
Simarago.
Yes, because he's a constituent.
For Haruna to raise to where he is,
yes.
Look at the contestant he was up against, Mr. Karangwa, who is a kingpin in the
yes, he was also against Chiwanda Sudi,
yes. and all that.
Yeah.
You see, Chiwanda, like I've told you, when you've had a political fault, when there's a fault line has been created in your body of politics, it is easier for forces to use that very fault line to widen it and actually dismember you.
Yeah.
Chiwanda, having lost an election, being dropped out of cabinet, that alone brought him into this race as a lame duck, as someone who was looking for relevance and all that. On the other hand, Kasolo is what he is. I mean, he's sitting over a major kitty as a minister in the Ministry of Finance, but also whose wife is running a major project in terms of financing for especially women and young girls who are into business. And then you are up against a man like Karangwa, yes, who is a kingpin in the Bugerere area. But you see, even in Bugerere, it's just that Bugerere is a very highly cosmopolitan area that has got it's a melting pot of the different cultures of this country. But in the sense of central as it should be, it gets down the tribal line. Karangwa is a Muvandimu. You understand? So there is no way he's going to get serious appeal beyond his little area of Bugerere and a few Babandimus that are from Masaka and Mitiana. But in the grand scheme of things, there would be a lot more forces that will be looking for an authentic Muganda, Kasoro, to be the guy in SEC. But can you imagine if Central was being led, represented by Karangwa? Then you have Jordan. So in other words, everyone else would be like from one region. So at least for the semblance of regional balance and having, the different regional areas represented by authentic people from those areas, it was only inevitable that Kasolo.
Yeah, but for me, Simon, I never imposed. I never imposed my aspiration on the way Uganda should look like. You read through history. People who are prominent and powerful politicians never rise to the top seat. When you talk about the Moshi Conference, Museveni wasn't one of the key players at the Moshi Conference. He's the one that emerged to lead Uganda. When you talk about the time the Gang of Four was jostling, Benaisa wasn't one of them. He's the one that ended up leading Uganda. When you talk about going into Lancaster, who are the powerful people, Bunyoro and Buganda, who emerged Prime Minister Apollo Milton Obote. There's something about Ugandan politics that rewards the silent schemer that sits back and watches other people destroy themselves.
In all this, the longest LCM
Yes.
is President Museveni. And
Exactly.
with the benefit of hindsight, have been old enough. And I think we should have this conversation with Muse Edward Rugumayo one of these days to just tell you the character of President Museveni as they saw him weave through himself from student politics in the 60s, coming through and all. That's why I say that his level of ambition, yes, is unmatched, but he is also a very calculative person. Question is, like you asked Stephen earlier, and I'm also worried that doesn't his kind of character and machinations also have a time limit to them?
Which is the point that I was trying to raise, that this new SEC, they have two problems. The first problem is, are they going to be held captive by the ambition of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, which is seemingly at its tail end? Or are they going to rise to the occasion within themselves to say, this is a new and different Uganda. We can midwife a transition without having to be hostile to Yoweri Kaguta Museveni?
I think the latter is more formidable, because even when you look at the composition of SEC as it is now, I don't think it will so much entertain stories of, you see, in 1986 or earlier than that. Because except Musei Chigongo and President Yoweri Museveni, the others are not
they're young.
are not people who can tell you any very eloquent stories of the experience in 1986. So eventually they will begin to start having conversations around the new Uganda, the Uganda whose biggest population demographic are young people below the age of 25 who were not here. The parents hadn't met in 1986. And even if they had met, those parents are not even alive today, for the most part, to make decisions for them as their children, say, vote for so and so, because they were dissipated by so many things, war and HIV and many other vagaries that have hit us as a country. So, but as that happens, Raymond, we may have put the spotlight so much onto the NRM and NEC and SEC engagements and forgot one other activity taking place just behind the street in industrial area on 7th Street, which is at the Electoral Commission. So far, I'm told there are over 200 folks that have collected
211 to be exact.
Nomination papers for the presidency of this beautiful country. Raymond, is it that this is a highly attractive position, or it has become a position so denigrated to the extent that every Tom, Kataha, and Kasiate are able to just walk the Electoral Commission and pick nomination forms? Because if you have 211, how many actually will be on the nomination roll? Don't you see a ballot paper of about 20 candidates?
And for me, this is when you're writing the political epitaph of Rebecca Kadaga, this is one of those things that the reason you have the number of people showing up at Electoral Commission to pick those nomination papers was because of electoral reform amendments in the age limit. When those amendments were being made, an MP, not an MP now anymore, Mr. Nwagaba, had made some fantastic chiming in and said, look here, I think, yes,
you want Nwagaba, what are you talking about here?
Augustus. He was the then, I think, opposition attorney general. And he's the one that had a set of reforms that he wanted. But the government, of course, came with its reforms.
Which Augustus?
Not Augustus. No.
Winfred
Nwagaba. Yes.
An MP.
Yes. He used to be a rebel MP. Yes. I don't know if he's still.
He still is. Yes. He's not in NRM.
Yes. So he had a set of reforms that he had agreed upon at the time. And he had actually brought in a body of independents together with the opposition to try and midwife this. Rebecca Kadaga was very unkind to that gentleman, because all this gentleman was saying, look here, you have this political moment. You have the numbers. You're going to get what you want, which is to remove the age limit to allow Yoweri Kaguta Museveni to run. But you shouldn't destabilize the electoral system, because the reforms as they look like now will destabilize the entire electoral system. And they went in hook, line, and sinker. So now you have those reforms which allow anyone who is a voter can go and pick the nomination forms. So you have 18-year-olds who are fresh out of school who think,
out of secondary school, they still have other tertiary.
Yes, who feel like I can represent the country and I'm going to go and pick nomination forms. You have all kinds of characters who now all they require is to just be a voter.
And then go out there and mobilize.
To pick the forms. Yes. But now the crisis is going to be that these people just need to get 100 signatures from 98 districts.
Which is something.
So you're going to end up with a ballot of possibly 60 people. Of the 211 that have picked those forms, you might end up with a ballot of 60 people. But you've also made it incredibly easy for all these political machinations, people who earn their money from just saying I'm on the ballot, to come and present themselves for the presidency. I know people who have submitted themselves to the presidency, and they're already talking to businessmen all across the world and saying, look here, I'm running for presidency in Uganda. I will give you this project. Now they're taking their con artist tricks from Kampala and making them global. So you're going to end up with scenarios, and I predict this is going to happen, where a presidential candidate of Uganda is charged for fraud in another country because they're getting some of this money from the Middle East.
Well, it will be first. You're seeing top political players in political parties which are not even anywhere close to power already being indicted by jurisdictions outside of here for, among other things, dealing in terror activities and cartels and dirty money.
Yeah, so that's going to be a massive dent on our political system and political structure.
The Right Honorable Rebecca Kadaga alone. I mean, anyone in her position, possibly, from the look of things, would have done exactly the same thing. You saw Right Honorable Anita Moon now campaigning and saying, you have tried me as speaker, and I can tell you without... Well, those are my own words. But she was simply saying she would never allow anything to see the light of day from the parliament which she presents over.
Yes.
That is the chagrin of the supreme leader, His Excellency President.
But that's also a crisis that for Museveni, I mean, you need to be able to look at yourself and say, how did I come into power as an ideologue and end up now as a bureaucrat in my own political system? Because what Museveni has become now is a bureaucrat in his own political system. The force of ideas has given way in NRM to the force of money. If I have money, I can push the NRM in any direction that I want.
And that, by the way, again, thank you for raising the issue of money. Should perhaps for concern President Museveni. I mean, maybe people have been arguing here and saying, this, a chodu, how does he show up to have deeper pockets than Mike Mukula? Because for the longest part, we thought one of the richest, if not the richest person from Eastern Uganda was Mike Mukula. And now it just turns out the man was simply an effigy of the economic person that he portrayed himself to be. The question is, where and how did Echodu make his money? How many such Echodus do we have that are silently sitting on money bags, either through business engagements or through marital ties, as I can see from what I've read recently in the newspapers, that he's married to someone that had a relationship with the Rockefeller Foundation. So who knows who is married to someone from MasterCard Foundation, who is married to George Soros.
I know who is married to people in Coca-Cola Africa.
Such things. So such a character could show up with the deep pockets and devour the same blanket which has been covering all of them as sake, but which has now, that money monster has eaten the part that has been covering the Mukulas, the Rebecca Kadagas. And like we say where I come from, that when a hyena has eaten the hide that you're using to cover yourself in the night. In the olden days, people cover themselves at night with a goat hide or something. When a hyena eats that hide and it is done, the next thing it will eat is you.
Yes,
so President Museveni should be concerned about how certain people have money in here that only will show up at an election time. And trust our populace. The moment you come with money, they will eat the money and gravitate towards you.
But also the other crisis is, how do you democratize Uganda? And this is the responsibility of democratizing Uganda lies profoundly on the NRM, because they're the biggest ruling party and the longest ruling party Uganda has had. Now, the problem, as I see it, is NRM is two sides of a coin. On one side, you have the political side of the NRM. On the other side, you have the military wing. And in the last election, the failure of the politicians led the military into being part of the electoral process. In a way, there was abuses of human rights. There was locking up of politicians. All of these things wouldn't have happened if the NRM political wing had been a profound, robust political machine. Now, the question is, this new political machine that has been engineered by NEC, by SEC, if it fails to confront the average reality of Ugandans, then they will have to sit back and the military steps in again. And I don't think you want that. There's no democratic result in the military stepping in again to fix political problems. This is something only Museveni was very likely going to understand that SEC to say the way to keep the military out of the politics of Uganda is to have a functional political system. And without a functional political system, you're exposing Uganda to very, very dangerous times.
See, Raymond,
anyway, I have hope.
Raymond, you're speaking from the assumption that
Yes.
President Museveni is actually hell-bent on having that functional political system that is devoid of the backdrop of the military brute and force coming in to stabilize things. No, I don't think that has...
He should. If he is not, he should.
That is what it may appear like. But one thing is for sure, he knows for a fact that there's no way you're going to keep the balance politically and remain the political head of this country without having strong control of the military. So it will always lack out in the shadow. And it's actually that is always used as a stark reminder to those who think they will just go get populist around, chant slogans, wave twigs, look good on ballot papers, get international funding, and then think that you can destabilize the status quo as the military watches its current commander-in-chief. And let's not forget what the military leadership looks like today. The purging of, old generals and bringing this new breed of young, educated generals who you may have thought possibly would come in to look at their military engagement as purely a military force that should be apolitical. But no. They know for a fact that the politics of this country is, for the most part, safeguarded by their presence in military uniforms.
No,
I don't look at the authentics as to why at a civic political process like the SEC and NEC elections, in the dead of the night, President Museveni will pull out his camouflage jacket to keep him warm, as opposed to a plain jacket that I'm sure he has plenty of those. That
I don't know if it's a crisis of circumstance or what, but Museveni has that one jacket. He's always worn it everywhere. But whenever he wants to send a message, I know he wears the full-on military fatigue.
Complete with the red collar
yes.
and everything.
That is when you want to send a message. But I think the jacket problem is that's his jacket. And Museveni is also a man of culture. So once he sticks to something, that's it. I know a friend, of course, who one time asked him, they had traveled out of the country, but said, "Sir, there are much better shirts that we can get you." And the man said, "No, I want a night-heel white shirt." Yes, I want a night-heel white shirt, nothing else. So I think in terms of dress code, that's the problem.
He makes the subtle presentations that leave an indelible brand mark. I can tell you, whatever it is that we remember from Kololo, I want to believe the most enduring image from Kololo that many Ugandans are going to remember is that trot that he made from the podium where he made the speech, running to his chair.
I don't know. That's political gimmicks, I think.
He knows how to get a certain message across of saying, by the way, I'm still the freshman that many of you seem to discover.
But I, as we end this podcast, there are two things I want to ask. One, Mr. Trodwong, I know that you listen to this podcast on some days. Please get your entire political machinery to clean up Kololo. Remove those posters. Please, 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 by all means, clean up. If not, get the people whose posters are there, find them, pay that money to KCCA workers to do the cleaning.
And you think
it's the shabbiest.
And you think right now,
yes,
with all due respect to my friend and classmate, Richard Thodong, you think right now, the biggest concern of Thodong or anyone at the NRM Secretariat is the authentic look and feel of Kololo Airstrip.
If it isn't, then
he's now looking at how they are accounting and sharing whatever spoils of little money that has been left around and taking in all sorts of things except the look and feel. I mean, we are just a shabby country in what we do. Look, we have a match today.
Yes.
In the evening. And for one reason or other, whoever it is that makes decisions in this country decides that roads around Nambole are going to be closed at peak hour in the morning to destabilize commuter traffic into the city and all that. And you think that's the kind of person that would reason well enough to say, I'm going to clean up in the place?
Yeah, but I also, as a warning leaf to the members of the NRM, if they're not careful, the biggest political party in the next parliament is very likely going to be the Independents. If they're not careful.
I don't think so, Raymond. I'm inclined to believe that whoever came out of the NRM Kamyufu, I think will constitute about the success rate is between 75 and 80.
In some political constituencies, yes.
Outside the metropolitan areas,
yes.
And some hotspots, which Zimbabwe is not even one of those, I think it's a cosa finito. Anyone that is an NRM flag bearer in many of these rural constituencies, which are the majority, is sure deal coming into parliament.
I wish them luck.
There's a force majeure.
Because there's those little politics that have crept up where the second competitors in the NRM election are starting to mobilize as independents, and there's nothing as the danger of incumbency that will be done away with. But Simon, we've come to the end of this podcast. What are we doing next?
Well, I think we're looking forward to yet having another live recording of our podcast, I think sometime in October, which I want to believe we should start working on to have a collaborative engagement with our friends from Rwanda and have a long form of coffee. But even then, I think we are going to participate in the International Day for Democracy, where we've been working closely and arranging with our friends from the European Union and the Swedish Embassy in Uganda to say this commemorative conversation around the democracy of our country coming in at this particular time in our democratic process, I think should and must be with a coffee in hand. So we're looking forward to that. I don't know about you, but we're looking forward to that conversation and many other engagements of business leaders who we occasionally host on Grab a Coffee to away from the politics. I mean, at the end of the day, the politics is the politics. We don't have the politics. So we need to survive and make ends meet for our own well-being as government plans for us, whether it comes to light or not. But there is money that should be made. There is personal financial discipline that ought to be adhered to. There is personal wellness. There is personal everything. Because at the end of the day, what we'll be discussing now is grand scheme of things. But we must be alive to be a part of the participants in
the grand
entrenching or changing the grand scheme of things. So those conversations are
I look forward to that. You've also promised us a global leading economist. I won't mention the name, but we're looking forward to that podcast when it comes.
Maybe we may have it remotely. We thought his schedule could allow him to have a conversation with us right on this table as he grabs a coffee. But I may have to work on, engage him from wherever it is that he will be. And possibly sending him his pack of coffee so that you brews it
and we have our coffee. Yes, but thank you so much to everyone that's been listening to us and watching us from wherever you get your podcasts from. Please continue to follow, like, subscribe, and share. We have a new set of social media handles all around. So please go and follow us on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, and let's continue the conversations there. So
wait a minute. You haven't told us what you're reading this week. You're the guy that does the 4 books every month.
I've had a tremendous reading week. So I was forced to read Jimmy Spire Sentongo's new book.
Yes.
What died when we lived. And because I was moderating his conversation and having a conversation between him, Dr. Zach, and Winnie Byanyima. So I had been reading that copy of the book and trying to get to the end of it. But
so what died when we lived? At least one thing.
No, it's a set of essays on Ugandan society, the lack of honesty in Ugandan society, from builders to market women to
tailors,
people
cobblers,
in office,
journalists.
And it's a very, very robust read. It's tons and tons of essays compiled into one. And the Editor's House facility, which edited it, did a really good job. It's the first time I possibly have read cover to cover a book without any grammatical mistakes, any grammatical slip-ups. It's well arranged. It's well chaptered. The essays are demarcated into chapters. So that was tremendous and good for me to watch. I also want to say that I have a book in copy now from Mr. Mamdani Mahmoud. He has a new book that's coming out later this year. I have been sent a review copy. I am going to be reading that copy. I'm heading to Fort Portal tomorrow, so I'm going to be reading that copy all my way to Fort Portal and back. And I look forward to the next week. But also I will be away in the next week. I'm going to our friends in Addis Ababa to do some work there.
Well, you know what to bring for us when you return.
Coffee, because we compete with them on coffee.
Well, I mean...
What are you doing for the week?
What the Prime Minister of Ethiopia did when he went to the Vatican, took, coffee and all the byproducts around their coffee. When our top politicians go to the Vatican, paintings of Uganda matters, but...
I will be meeting the gentleman. I will let him know that you said good things about him.
My regards. So yes, same old. I can't say there's anything to write home about with regard to what I see myself doing next week. It's the usual run of the mill that I'm always involved in. It's just that in the last couple of days I've been involved in a conversation around occupational safety and health, and this is one thing that for the most part is not one of the things that bother Ugandans the most. I mean, people are struggling for daily bread, and so to tell them to wear a helmet, have gloves, and make sure that their eyes are covered when they are dealing with welding equipment is the last thing on their minds. And yet we have so many people languishing away in our referral hospitals from injuries that they could have avoided. But maybe it also pales in comparison when you look at keeping yourself safe at a workplace, and the moment you step out of your workplace, you find yourself face to face with bad infrastructure that in itself is a death trap for you. And so what's the essence of keeping myself so safe at work in a sanitized environment when I'm going to come and find myself on a road like Chira, Bulindo, and all sorts of things? So we need a bigger shift in the regard of human.
We have a supporter of this podcast called Bernadette, who works in the Greater Kampala Metropolitan Area Project. And she has made assurances that this road here, in the next 5 months, our lives will be fundamentally different. I want to believe her. Yeah, so I will just say this is the last time we might have to complain about the road.
And we'll conclude with the pet subject that you and I have had for the last couple of podcasts, which is the question around refugees and what it is to be a refugee in this country and how we as Ugandans tend to relate to them. The other day, it was I think a Friday, I was driving through the Buziga area around after lunch, and I saw all these people. It just to me looked like little Addis Ababa or Asmara, because I think they were coming in from a church or a synagogue. I think they have their prayers on Fridays. And I had a moment to listen to the public buzz because I was standing somewhere by the street, and the comments coming in from Ugandans were not quite very charitable, you would say. Although I think we are also the kind that will speak badly, quietly, and not express that from our actions.
Publicly,
they were saying, look at these guys, imagine they're doing all the manual work that we should be doing. They are riding the borders, they are riding the tuk-tuks and making deliveries. They have their own customized bars and hangouts. They have their own now little supermarkets. They eat their own cuisine. So they are just here occupying our space and inflating property rates, but there is not so much we are getting out of them. Others even said we can't even so much as intermarry with them. I don't know, what's your think? What's your sense around integration of this whole question? And then, of course, coming in at the backdrop of Uganda signing an agreement with the United States of America to consume some of their unwanted aliens who cannot even go back to their home countries.
So Uganda, in that sense, is one of the success stories globally. We're in a uniquely diverse country, more than 65 different tribes. The addition of other tribes into an already diverse system, I mean, people might have nationalism, but doesn't change that. When you go to Kabalagala, for example, and people are buying things from a shop, they might immediately notice that the shop owner is Ethiopian, but he won't stop the transaction from happening.
Absolutely.
And many Ugandans, deeply at heart, because we've come from conflict societies, understand what it means to not have a home. And they're willing and ready to endure refugees because you understand what it means for these people not to have a home. Now, psychologically, refugees will outwork the local community. They are not a settled polity. They are starting from scratch. They need to raise money for rent. They don't have property rights in the city, so they need to also be able to get money to get some property rights. If they have to buy a property, there are conditions that are attached to that property. They don't have the same conditions as Ugandans. Uganda is a success story in that regard. So many people say many things about Uganda, but we're a success story in that regard. We gave, the Rwandan president was here as a refugee. There's no difference between him and a citizen of Uganda. He has a pet name from Toro, for example. He served in the Ugandan civil service before he went back. The former president of Tanzania, Jakaya Kikwete, came here as an intelligence officer, stayed here for over 10 years. That shows you just what Uganda is in terms of accommodating very diverse communities. And it's also because the Ugandan polity, unlike other polities, we're not exactly nationalist. We might bring it out in things like football, but at the heart of it, we're not very nationalist. We understand people to simply be people. There might be some tribal tones and sentiments from earlier established civilizations, but those tribal tones and sentiments don't do away with the fact that they also have constituted diverse settlements. You come to a place like Toro, for example, we have a name in Toro, Rukidi. A Mukidi is someone who came as a Nubian soldier.
Mercenary.
Yes, but they've now been firmly integrated into the Toro society. And even the king of Toro bears the name Rukidi. You have polities. We've just come from running.
Keith and kin in Toro, in Kamwenge, to be
exactly,
exact.
yes.
Huge population of Bachiga.
Yeah, we've just come from running the Kasese Marathon. And Kasese is also a cosmopolitan area because there are Congolese there are Batoro there, Basongora, Banyabindi. There are many different communities which live in a very small piece of land. So many Ugandans understand what it means to not have. And also, I think part of the success of the Ugandan society, at least thus far, is that people don't try to wildly amass wealth, at least in the rural communities. Once someone has a farm and it's settled, they then move on to other things other than amassing large tracts of land. It might be the newer forms of culture that actually undo that. But in terms of refugee settlements, I think Uganda has a success story to say about things like that. Yeah.
Thanks, Raymond. I mean, we couldn't have concluded it better than that, rather than away from the high-octane political conversations we had earlier and concluding it with the human element of what really makes us Uganda. And it's sad that we cannot galvanize ourselves progressively into the next stage of the CHAN. We are looking forward to AFCON, and I think there are a number of lessons that have been learned. But at least I'm sure you are happy with the XI that has been called in for the AFCON, which include no less than our star goalkeeper, Dennis
Onyango Masinde. I don't know if he will play, but at least he's been called up.
Let's wait and see.
Yes.
Let's meet same time, same place next week when we have yet another opportunity to grab a coffee and brew some deep conversations around our society, our politics, and the economy. God bless.